Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again. Good afternoon, or maybe depending on what time zone you may be in right now, good morning or good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rachel Madison, and I am the Assistant Director of Student Services in the Department of Geophysics. And we are so excited to have you here today to learn more about the Geophysics Department and the admissions process. First, we would like to share our agenda and the format of this webinar. So first on our agenda, we will share an introduction to the Geophysics Department. We'll share about our faculty, research, information to understand who we are and what we do. The second part will discuss an overview of the application process. And lastly, we will have a Q&A, and you get to ask questions from our panel of geophysics faculty, current geophysics graduate students, and support staff from the school and the department. So you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A function, and we invite you to use that resource during the webinar. I will be moderating the Q&A, and we will try our best to answer all of your questions. So the chat function will not be available and will only be used to share links and resources throughout the webinar. And lastly, the session will be recorded, so don't worry about capturing all the information, as we will post the recording link to our website next week. And there will also be an email sent to all participants here that will include all the information that is shared throughout this webinar. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the Geophysics Admissions Chair, Bill Ellsworth, and he will introduce our panel.
Thanks very much, Rachel, and thanks to all of you for attending today to come to learn something about Stanford Geophysics. We're really delighted to have you with us today. You'll be hearing from Professor Biondo Biondi, who is the chair of the department, and Professor Sonia Tiku soon about some of the things that define geophysics at Stanford. And then later on during the question and answer period, we'll have a chance to hear from two of our graduate students, Carissa Pepin and Milad Bader. We're also joined today by Rachel Madison, who is the Assistant Director of Student Services, and Dr. Lupi Carrillo, who is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here in the School of Earth, Energy, and Environmental Sciences at Stanford. So we've got a great team today, and we do hope that you will take advantage of the opportunity to ask us questions. And as Rachel explained, go ahead and use the chat function for that. But first, we're going to hear from Biondo, who's going to tell you a little bit about Stanford and about our department.
Thank you, Bill. I am Biondo Biondi. I am the chair of the department, and I would like to welcome all of you to the webinar, and I hope to welcome many of you next year as students. And just on a personal side, I see that many of you probably are connecting from abroad, and definitely not from California. And myself, I showed up too many years to count as a grad student here at Stanford, and ended up that I met my wife and never left the area. So I don't know if that is the destiny of your life, but this is a fantastic environment where to go professionally and go with family. Next slide, please. So as you see here, this is our faculty, and we are very varied faculty and very diverse in many ways. And we are proud of the complementary and at the same time synergistic characteristics of our research and teaching. We are proud that we do have a lab component to our research and teaching, as well as modeling, both computer modeling and theoretical modeling, a strong also data analysis, both on computer and not, of geophysical data, and also we complement that with collecting data ourselves. So there is a field component in the department. We are also proud that some of us do focus their research on answering fundamental questions on physical phenomena in on the Earth or in the atmosphere and ocean, And some of us focus the research, like myself, on methodology that enables to answer those questions and potentially other important questions that are important for societal regions. So now I will go through a little bit for probably 10 seconds each of our colleagues. I will skip Bill and Sonia since they are here and they can introduce themselves. So starting from the top left, Greg Berosa, he is an earthquake seismologist. He is in sabbatical in Germany as we speak. Eric Danahan is a computational geoscientist, modeling complex interaction between solid rocks, fluids, and atmosphere, as well as an earthquake dynamic. Bill, you've seen him. Lucia Gualtieri, she is a environmental seismologist. She uses seismic waves of many different kinds to better understand our environment, at the same time using the one generated by the environment to image the subsurface. Simon Klemper is a crustal seismologist, so he uses mostly reflection seismology to understand better the Earth crust down deep many kilometers, even tens of kilometers. Rosemary Knight is a world-known hydrogeophysicist. She actually started the field in many ways. So she's using geophysical data and modeling to understand better and better manage water resources. Dustin Schroeder is a radar person, both for application on Earth, mostly related to glaciology, understand the dynamics of ice sheets, as well on the planets. Howard Zepker has been one of the starting people in synthetic aperture radar technology and has been applying that technology to monitor many processes. Paul Siegel is a very well-known professor of earthquake and volcano deformation. He was one of the first Earth scientists using GPS sensor to really improve our understanding of the Earth. Jenny Sucali is an assistant professor. She is basically an expert in numerical modeling of complex phenomena, and besides understanding natural phenomena, she has been also focusing on better understanding social phenomena, as well improving resilience of cities. Sonia is a paleomagnetist, but I will let herself and a planetary scientist. I will let her to introduce herself. And then finally, last but not least, is Tiziana Vanario. She is an associate professor, and she does experimental rock physics, as well as she studies materials, in particular natural materials, and the potential application for improving our society, like having better behaved cements. And next slide, please. The activity of this faculty mostly map in the research groups. I'm not going to list them because they are basically, as I said, quite similar, parallel to the activity of the faculty. I would encourage you to go to our website and look at this page and then click on the different research groups so you can understand more in depth what each of us is doing. And the next one, I think, is this is a kind of a typical Stanford recruiting. For the one of you that don't know our climate, we have a wonderful climate. Never too hot in summer and never too cold in winter. This is a photo taken at the last snowfall at Stanford long time ago, even before that I showed up, believe it or not. So I've never seen snow at Stanford. And so that's now indeed we move on to Sonia, I believe. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for leading us into our tour of the department, Viando. I am Sonia Tiku, and I'm an assistant professor in the department. I specialize in, as Viando pointed out, paleomagnetism, with applications in understanding both the Earth as well as other planets. So I also call myself a planetary scientist. So in addition to that research, I'm also, you see on the screen what's called the ACDI, that stands for the Associate Chair for Diversity and Inclusion in the Geophysics Department. So I'm kind of the point person on the faculty for navigating DEI issues in the department. So if you could go to our first topic. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about our degree programs. So here in the Geophysics Department, we offer at the graduate level both master's as well as PhD degrees spanning the breadth of research topics in our department. The PhD is, typically a 5-year program where you're pursuing a doctoral degree and you'll write a PhD thesis. We have 2 options for our master's degree right now. If you may or may not be aware of this, but we have a more coursework focused master's. Those are for students who might want to just bolster their background in geophysics before going off into industry or other jobs. And we also have a research-based master's for people who may want to continue on in research science and pursue a PhD later. So those are our degree programs in a nutshell. Next up, we're going to talk about what do people actually do once they graduate with these degrees in geophysics. One thing that's great about geophysics is honestly, no matter what subdiscipline you join within our department, you will come out with a very powerful skill set that is applicable to many things. You will learn how to do research, process technical information. You will probably learn how to code better. You will probably learn, you may even learn lab skills at some point or the other during this degree program. So no matter what you want to do, whether it's going into industry or continuing on in academia, I know people who have also become diplomats after their degrees or work at museums or science journalists. There's so many different places you can take this. You can go into data science. You have a powerful quantitative toolkit that you will walk out of when you're done in this department. So you can do anything. And then finally, I want to speak to diversity in the geophysics department, because we, I think, are a very awesome community that represents a wide swath of experiences. We not only encompass a wide breadth of intellectual diversity, covering lots of different subdisciplines in our field, but we also have a range of backgrounds, and we strive to be a very inclusive and accessible environment for everyone that we work with here. And I think it's important to highlight that diversity is integral to the type of work we do, because if we all think in the same way and with the same techniques, we're not going to make any progress in science. We require different ways of thinking, which requires different backgrounds. And whenever we combine and come together, we can really do some powerful things here, and we can address the global problems that are facing our society today. So I'm very excited to include many of you, hopefully, in our cohort coming in next fall. All right, so just to continue on to the next slide, Rachel. I wanted to highlight that we have a couple different fellowship programs that are accessible to our applicants. So the first one is the Dean Scholars Program. So the Dean Scholars Program is a 1-year fellowship that covers 1 year of your graduate studies financially. And that is given to students who come in with a background of being from an underrepresented minoritized community. And likewise, we also have the EDGE program, which provides supplemental stipends and conference travel funding for students as well. So those are opportunities that are available to many of our applicants. And then I think what we're going to do next is we're going to transition into the actual application process and how to apply. And leading our discussion there, I will reintroduce you to Professor Bill Ellsworth, who is our Chair of Graduate Admissions.
Great. Thank you, Sonia. So what I'd like to do in the next few minutes is give you just an overview of the application process for those of you who perhaps have not started it yet. And we'll also have an opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do with the applications. It's really kind of a two-way street to think about, because we'd like to learn about you, and from the application, that's going to be our best resource as we make decisions about who will be admitted for our next graduate cohort. So as you begin to think about applying, if you haven't done so already, I'd really encourage you to visit our website, which has a lot of detailed information about the application process and describes in considerable detail the things that are needed to make a successful application. Be sure to explore other Stanford websites that are relevant to graduate education. Many of our students take courses elsewhere in the university, and this is an opportunity for you to familiarize yourself with what some of those opportunities might be. We also very strongly encourage everyone to make contact with our faculty members. Most graduate students work very closely with a single faculty member for a number of years, or perhaps two. And during that time, it's very important for you and the faculty member to form a team to be working on the projects that will be leading to your successful graduate career at Stanford. So begin by contacting faculty members, of course, first to see if they are accepting graduate students for the current cycle, because not all of us are. Note also that the application, there is an application fee, and the fee waiver deadline, if you should wish to apply for a fee waiver, is coming up quite soon on November 30th. So next slide, please, Rachel. So let's now look at the applicants of the application. Again, the application deadline is December 14th, so just a little over a month away. And at that time, we will begin our evaluation process. The application is made online, and it consists of an application form, which has many, many questions. And I would encourage everyone to be sure that you answer every question that's being asked. If you're not sure about what the question is asking, don't hesitate to reach out to us to get some clarification. You'll also need to submit official transcripts so that we know something about the education and your success that you've had to date. We also have a personal statement, and this is something that you should be writing to us that will help us better understand who you are, what your experiences have been, and why you want to be a geophysicist, why you think that Stanford University might be a good place for you to pursue your graduate education. Another very important part of the application process are letters of recommendation. We'll accept 3, and these should be letters from professors or other professional colleagues that you have met that would be in a position to provide us with a confidential evaluation of your abilities, your career path, your passion for what you're doing. I know that these letters are not common in all cultures, but for us, they're very important. And we'll be discussing what makes a good letter here in just a bit. I think Dr. Lupe Carrillo will have some comments on that. And finally, if you are not a native English speaker, your TOEFL scores will be required. And you also have the option to add other material. What's often very helpful for us is to have a CV. That often tells us something about you that isn't going to be obvious in either your personal statement or your offline application. For example, what type of jobs have you had in the past? What kinds of volunteer experiences have you taken advantage of? These are the kind of things that are very helpful to find in a CV. So next slides, if you would, Rachel.
Yeah, I just wanted to cut in for 1 second because I forgot to say
Sure,
earlier. Yeah. I was going to say, with regard to any of our degree programs, you should not worry about funding your degree program. When you're in graduate school in science at Stanford, we will pay for the entire thing. You will be given a stipend to live off of, and all of your tuition and fees and health insurance will be covered. So you should not have to worry about finances in any part of this. And on top of that, on top of not having to worry about financing the degree, I also wanted to point out that you may not even need to worry about financing the application if you are dealing with financial hardship. As you can see on this slide, if you are in financial need, you may request a fee waiver. from Stanford that will cover your application fee. We cannot give this to everyone, but we have a limited number of them that we can dole out based on individual circumstances. So sorry about not mentioning that earlier.
No, that's really a very important point. And that in a typical research group that each professor has, not only are the students having their tuition fees being paid and receiving a stipend, but they typically will receive funds to attend conferences and for publications and things like that. So our goal as professors is to make sure that everyone succeeds, and we do our best to provide all of those resources. So thank you for that, Sonia. So let's talk a little bit about the evaluation of the applications. We unfortunately received many more applications than we have slots for admission. So it's important for you to be a successful applicant that you show us how you are really prepared to take on our program. Among the things that we're going to be looking for is this demonstrated interest in the research topics that we cover. We frankly don't cover all areas of geophysics at this point, so this is why it's very important to make a connection with one of our faculty members so that your interest can be aligned with one of our faculty members. We also look for the signs that a student is going to be able to thrive in the program, and this is a multi-year process, typically 5 years or more for a PhD. So maturity and perseverance, ability to overcome challenges are important characteristics, and these are things that can be brought not only in your personal statement, but hopefully in letters of recommendation that you would receive. It's always good for us to know something about your past experiences. Perhaps you've had the chance to participate in geophysical research. Tell us about that. Perhaps you've done research in some other field that can be useful as well as other types of life experience that will give us some idea about your capabilities and the types of challenges that you've overcome in the past. We also want to know, why do you want to get a PhD? There are many options for advanced study. Geophysics is for us, the faculty, a really exciting field, and we'd like to understand how you feel that your interest in that field will mesh with ours. And as I mentioned, again, the key really in many ways is finding a match between your interests and those of the faculty advisors. Okay, Sonia, I think Rachel, next slide. Yes. So Sonia, were you going to talk about these? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't sure what was going on for a second. All right, so another thing that I wanted to mention was, as part of your application, you may submit a CV or a curriculum vitae, which is a 1 or 2 page document that summarizes your prior education, research experiences, and any publications that you might have so far. But that is optional. You don't have to do it. I want to emphasize that you may not submit any additional documents other than a CV on top of the ones that are just required already. Definitely submit everything that is required, but other than maybe a CV, don't submit anything else. We will not consider anything else in the admissions process, like a copy of your senior thesis or any other documents that could be used. We want to be fair, and we want to evaluate all of our applicants on sort of an equal playing ground. And then another thing that's very important, as Bill mentioned earlier, is getting letters of recommendation. So we're going to hear now from Lupe Carrillo, who's going to give us some tips on how to get those letters and other aspects of the admissions review.
Thank you, Sonia. And hi, everyone. So one of the things that I do for the School of Earth as the director of DI is I recruit students into the geophysics department and other departments. And one of the tips that we usually give out is making sure that you ask for strong letters of recommendation. So one of the things that you should know is that it's perfectly fine to ask if there will be a strong letter, because sometimes if you have a letter and the letter is not strong, that could be something that might not be helpful, right, in the committee fully assessing your potential. So don't be shy about asking your recommenders, to tell you very honestly if they would feel strongly about writing the letter of rec for you. One of the reasons why this is an important aspect of the application is that this is an opportunity where people will speak about your potential for research. And so this is something that you should really pay attention to and make sure to ask the recommenders way in advance. The next tip that we have is the diversity statement. And so the Stanford University graduate admissions application asks for a diversity statement. It's a short paragraph, and it's really your opportunity to speak more about the ways that you contribute to diversity, either through your extracurricular activities as an undergraduate, through leadership, through extracurricular, through organizations, or through personal experience, right? Sometimes just getting through academia as a first generation student, like myself, is something that you bring with you a unique perspective to the work that you do. So it could be anything to your personal story that you want to share, or maybe the way that this background influences your research, right? Some students look at questions of equity, some students look at certain geographies and locations based on the diverse background that they bring into the field. And do we have any other statement of purpose? So just as I mentioned, letters of recs are about other people speaking about your potential. Statements of purpose is about you speaking about your own interests. And so it's important to really think in terms of making a case and making a match, stating why you think you're a good match for that department. And so don't be afraid to really state explicitly that you want to work with certain people, that you're really passionate about answering certain research questions, because this is your opportunity to really be persuasive and to say, this is why this would be a wonderful place for me to grow as a scientist and as a researcher. And all I can say that these are things that I, as a first generation college student, I actually was mentored on. And so we just want to really remove the barriers and share as much information when it comes to the application process. But these are things that we highly recommend you pay attention to. And I guess we'll go to the next slide and turn it over to Bill.
Great, thanks very much, Lupe. So just to remind everyone of our deadlines, the application deadline is coming up in a month on December 14th. The faculty will then be evaluating all of the applicants over the next couple of months. It will take us several months to make our final decisions about who will be invited to join the class of graduate students beginning in the fall of 2022. I know this seems like a long time, but we read every application very carefully. Typically, at least 3 faculty members will be reading the entire package for every applicant. So this is one reason why we really appreciate the care that you will take in terms of preparing the application. By the time we get to mid-March, we're now in the decision timeframe, and that's when we will be sending out information to those who are being admitted or denied admission or possibly be on hold. And finally, for those who are admitted, we have an April 15th response deadline. Many other institutions use April 15th as a deadline, and that's the time that we need to have a firm commitment from everyone. So that's in a nutshell is the calendar that we're looking at over the next couple of months as we go between the application process and decisions on the incoming class. So just a few, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, no, I was going to share some concluding remarks, but I'm curious to hear more, Bill, if you have any other.
No, Lupe, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank you and everyone else for providing tips, and just want to let the audience know that we really are excited that you're interested in applying to geophysics here at Stanford, and that, you know, one thing about the application process is that there's a limited amount of spots, that there's really quite a lot of eligible students who qualify for graduate work at Stanford. And so it really is about the match and making the case for the match, not necessarily that you don't qualify or you're not eligible, but really kind of showing that you in your research interests make a good match with faculty here. So it's not really about whether you're qualified to go to grad school, but when you will apply and why, right? And people have many different reasons for applying to graduate school, and we hope that Stanford Earth is a good fit, but we also understand that your research may be a better fit with other programs. I do want to share that we have seen instances where students who apply to Stanford may not have found that fit initially, but they actually return as PhD students, right, after getting a master's elsewhere. or sometimes they come back as postdocs. And so we encourage you to maintain a relationship with the school and with this department as you explore the field of geophysics. And we're very excited for you that you're on this journey and that you're already on the right track, right, by attending this webinar. So I'll turn it over back to Rachel.
Yeah, thanks, Lupe. Can you continue to share about maybe some of these campus resources, the DEI office and the communities of practice?
Sure. So, one thing to note is that once students are admitted to Stanford, Stanford very much operates under the philosophy of we want everyone to thrive. So going back to Sonia's point, everyone gets the same amount of funding. Even the fellowships that she referred to, that's sort of the extra icing on the cake, because we make sure that the foundational sort of funding is established first. And so in addition to this philosophy, we have a lot of resources on campus, like the DI office here at the School of Earth. And we also have cultural centers. I think, Rachel, if you could put the next bullet point, thank you. We also have cultural centers here at Stanford University that unite to different communities across the school. So there will be opportunity to meet other folks outside of Stanford Earth in humanities and sciences, in the School of Medicine, in engineering, who are part of similar communities. And again, going back to this philosophy that we want students not just to survive, but to thrive while they're at Stanford. And Rachel has some other resources to share with you all.
Yes, thanks, Lupe. Yes, as you can see, Stanford has many resources, and we are only naming a few. So if there are any questions about how Stanford supports international students, we have a whole office dedicated to supporting the success of Stanford's international community. This is called the Bechtel International Center, and they help students with visas, travel information, employment, maintaining status, and many other areas. And there's their website there. And there's also a website called Undocumented at Stanford, and their mission is to provide undocumented and documented students with an equitable education that meets their specific needs, and to continue dialogues of community between students, faculty, and staff. And lastly, the Geophysics Department has a dedicated staff member to support geophysics students, and that is me. And as the Assistant Director of Student Services, I have the honor to partner with geophysics faculty and help support students throughout their academic journey. I help students with questions about funding, degree progress, courses, and anything else students need to know about Stanford campus and graduate life. And more information can be found on our website too. And so now we will be entering into our time of question and answer, where you all get to ask some questions to the geophysics faculty, current students, myself, and Lupe as well. And so what we're going to do right now is we're just going to have the panel reintroduce themselves and share what some information they can answer. So we'll start off with Biondo.
Thanks, Rachel, and everybody else. I will repeat, I'm Biondo Biondi. I'm here as a chair and as a faculty member. And I forgot to introduce my scientific interest, that is seismic imaging, both from passive and active data. Bill?
Yes, so again, I'm Bill Ellsworth, and I'm a research professor in the department. Among my many duties, I co-direct the Stanford Center for Induced and Triggered Seismicity. This is a collection of faculty not only from within the department, but across the university that is investigating this societally important issue of earthquakes that are being caused by people. My research interests are in earthquakes and seismology, and this has been pretty much my research focus in recent years. Sonia.
Hi, and again, I'm Sonia Tiku, and I focus on studying the magnetic histories of planets with paleomagnetism, and I also work on impact cratering processes and other planetary science problems. I can talk about laboratory research in geophysics in our department. I can talk about planetary science, and I can talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, since I am the associate chair for that in this department. Next, I will introduce Carissa.
Hi, everyone. I am Carissa, and I am a fifth year PhD student. That's very strange to say. I've been here so long. I study radar remote sensing, and essentially what I do is I measure deformation of the Earth's surface, specifically related to deformation caused by fluid extraction or injection at wells. Since I have been here for so long, you can ask me questions about pretty much anything related to what it's like to be a PhD student at Stanford, specifically in the geophysics department. In addition to that, I can talk about what it's like to live off campus. I've lived off campus my entire time here. I can talk about what the geophysics department is like. I can talk about the initiatives in the DEI program a little bit, but Lupe and Sonia are probably better equipped at that. But I can also talk about the wellness initiatives that we have going on in the School of Earth, because that's going to be a really important component of your life as a graduate student. And yeah, I can almost talk about anything else, but I'll pass it off to Milad.
Hello, everyone. My name is Milad. I'm a fourth year PhD student. And my main research focus is waveform inversion using distributed acoustic sensing in unconventional oil reservoirs. So it's a lot of computation, a good deal of coding and inverse problems, and applied math and applied geophysics. You can ask me if you like about my research, but I can go on for hours. But you can also ask me about being an international student. With myself, I'm an international student. The cost of living. I know that if you come from certain countries, you might be shocked by the numbers and the prices here, but it's all relative. You can also ask me about living on campus, about having a family while being a graduate student. I had myself 2 kids during these 4 years, and any other practical matters you think of, I would be happy to answer. I'll pass it back to Rachel.
Thank you both for sharing. Yes, so as I mentioned, I'm the Student Services in Geophysics, so I am the one-stop shop for any questions students might have about navigating Stanford, maybe questions about degree requirements, policies, and procedures, and anything about what it's like being a geophysics student here. And then I will pass it off to Lupe.
Hi, everyone. I could talk more about how we create inclusive spaces here at Stanford University in our work with the cultural centers and also our DEI office at Stanford Earth. But I could also speak from the perspective of a first to college student. I was the first one in my family to go to college to do a PhD. And so I'm happy to give tips on the application process, but we have students here as well that can speak about the experience of being geophysics. So I also encourage you ask some questions as well. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. So we had a great question that was answered at the beginning of this. And the question is PhD preferred over a master's degree? I don't know, maybe if Bill, you'd like to answer that, or Biondo?
Well, I can give you my perspective on that. I think we see primarily PhD students in this department historically. I think there is a strong desire on the part of the faculty to have students who are going to be moving forward as professionals in the field. There are many ways, of course, to be a professional. And historically, Stanford has had a relatively small cohort of master's students. We are expanding that program a little bit. And again, this is a reason for being in contact with the faculty members that are currently expecting to take master's students. So there's room in the department for both. And this is, again, why making contact with the faculty as you apply is so important.
Great. Thank you, Bill, for that. One question says, for current grad students, what is the work culture like within the geophysics department? What efforts are there to maintain a sustainable work-life balance? It's a great question. Carissa, you want to take a stab at that?
Sure, I can take a stab at that. So I think in general, we do pretty well as a program. there have been a lot, or this topic comes up a lot in our wellness program. And we have 2 great wellness liaisons that really help formulate discussions around how you keep a good work-life balance, and that it is okay to prioritize yourself and what you need, because in the end, if you have done that, you're only going to be a better researcher. And I truly believe in discussions with the faculty that they believe that as well. You know, they want their students to be happy because that's when you're doing the most work. And so the most important thing that you can do as a student, I think, is just maintain a dialogue about your needs. What are the conditions that you need to be working your best? And other students will support you in that, and your faculty advisors and everybody here will likely, you know, as long as you're communicating and discussing how best to accommodate those needs, they will be met. So I think that answered it. Did I miss anything? Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. Milad, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, remember that you are applying out of interest, and you're gonna be doing something you like, and you're gonna be managing your own time most of the time. So it's not like working in a company and you have to follow a schedule and you're forced to do so. It's like really having a hobby and exerting your hobby daily. So it's a perfect time for, I mean, it's a perfect work environment. You're not gonna have this opportunity later in life when you start working in companies. Or so really, I mean, it's no better than being in graduate studies. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Great, thank you for that, Milad and Carissa, very helpful. We also have a question that says, I'm wondering if the letters of recommendation have the same deadline as the other application materials. And the short answer for that is yes. So all application materials are due by the application deadline, as reviews will begin shortly after the application deadline. And maybe, Bill, if you want to add anything or elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, I guess I would add that if letters come in within several weeks after the deadline, they're still in time for us to evaluate them in the first reading. So, you know, it's a very busy time of year for geophysicists around December 14th, the AGU meeting underway. So, but we understand that. And if in discussing, well, as the point's been made, be sure to, you know, consult with the person that you're asking to write letters. You can ask them about the deadline. If they simply can't get the letter in, say, by the end of the year, they might just drop us a note to let us know it's on the way. And that would be very helpful.
Yes, great. Thank you, Bill, for adding that information. So we have another question that says, I'm wondering what the professional careers of past PhD students are like. Do any of the faculty members have an answer to that?
Let me take that. I think that is very varied. I think Sonia mentioned somewhat unusual path as well, interesting career path for geophysicists, and that applies to our students. If you become a student here and graduate, you will acquire skills that are extremely valued in many areas of the professional life. That is very much true for academics. So many of our students, they become academics in one way or the other. Many, they move on to a postdoc position to some of the very prestigious universities. So that is, if you want, is the typical one. Along the career, there is also the potential of kind of not exactly academics, but not necessarily industry. There are places like the USGS, where Bill worked for many years, and he will be able to tell you more, or the national labs. Just staying in the Bay Area, there are 3 national labs in the Bay Area, but that is also a career that is available for graduates of our department. And then there is the industry, and the industry can go from a resource industry, can be the oil and gas, but can be also the environmental industry. Now, budding water resources industry. Some of our students, mostly remote sensing, they are also working for the private sector in remote sensing industry. And some of our students, I would say, past 5-10 years more than in the past, but not exclusively, they leverage, if you want, the heavy quantitative and computational skills that they have acquired here. And they like the lifestyles, and they like Silicon Valley and the tech world. So some of our students, they do work for the tech industry in the area here in the Bay Area, or maybe in other high-tech hubs around the country or around the world.
Great, thank you, Biondo. I don't know if Sonia or Bill wants to add anything to that. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I would just say, like, the trajectories of our students have a lot to do with our individual research disciplines. I think that there are certain faculty members in this department who have more connections with industry naturally as part of their work. Someone like me, my connections are more with NASA or with museums and journalism, things like that. So it also kind of depends on the culture of your group and your advisor. So, but just know that, like, the world is your oyster, you'll figure it out eventually.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Biondo. We also have a couple questions that talk about students who are interested in possible projects with faculty members. So how do prospective students go about knowing what projects are available? Maybe if they have a specific research interest, how do they navigate that space?
Let me take a stab at that. First, I think the best way is get in contact with the faculty that you are potentially interested to work with, I think by email. And the faculty may suggest to have a Zoom session like that, but with a much smaller. Typically, I do have Zoom sessions with students that I'm considering myself and other senior member of my group, and I believe that many of my colleagues do that kind of contacts. The other one is that it depends very much on the groups, how much predefined projects are available. In general, I would say that one of the real difference between a PhD and also a master in many ways program and a bachelor program is that you're expected to define your research project. So you will come in, your advisor will work with you to start to work on a research project. We don't expect that you are already a full-formed researcher as you arrive here. But at the end of the education process, at the end of a PhD, being able to define the problem and the research project and understand what is needed is really, beside any technical skills or scientific insight, is one of the major goals of our education.
Rachel, maybe I could add just a little bit more to that as well. Just to say a little bit about what happens when you arrive as a student, that you'll typically spend the first year or two taking courses that'll be foundational in geophysics at the graduate level, as well as perhaps any physics or math or computational courses that may be important for your background. And typically at the end of the second year, there will be a qualifying examination to be formally admitted to the PhD program. And it's at that time that you will be coming forward with a proposal for the work that you want to do. We don't have a written test, so you're not going to be taking another GRE or more advanced test. Rather, we're going to be examining what your ideas are for developing the subject that will be the centerpiece of your thesis.
Great, thank you for that, Bill. So we also have a question that spoke to the topic of finances and what accommodations do we offer to ensure that those don't stop individuals from applying. Maybe Lupe, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I think we can't stress enough is that Stanford really makes sure that students receive funding to pursue their PhD. And I believe also master's, is that correct? I just wanted
Correct.
to, okay.
Yes.
And that's very rare. As many of you know, exploring different degrees, usually PhDs are paid for at a R1 university, but masters are usually expected that the applicants fund that or through the personal loans or their own finances. So it's quite opportunity and privilege that we do have some funding for masters here at Stanford Earth and the geophysics department. Additionally, once you come to Stanford, there's these other fellowships that Sonia spoke about that really value leadership and DEI. So these are students who have demonstrated commitment and leadership and diversity or come from underrepresented backgrounds. And we also have, just to support students throughout their time here, we have emergency grant aids provided by other resources at Stanford. So there might be some life emergencies that happen while you're a graduate student. So there are funding resources there. Also, there's resources for conferences and computing needs. And so again, it goes back to the type of place that people want you to succeed while you're at Stanford. Thank you.
Thank you, Lupe. And we had a question that, let's see, I lost it, to Milad and Carissa. What are some of the biggest challenges of PhD work that you did not anticipate? And how has your perception of academia changed as you navigated your degrees?
Those are excellent questions. Let's see. I think I'll answer the first one first. So I think one of the things that surprised me the most was how much freedom I had to kind of pursue my own interests. And that, to be fair, is specific to the advisors that I had. But I suppose in my limited knowledge of what a PhD actually was, I didn't expect to have free reign to a large extent about what I did. And so it did take me a really long time to figure out how best to manage my time, how to trust that I knew what I should be doing when, because a lot of times in undergrad, you're just told what you should be doing. And there's a syllabus that you can just kind of check off every week. Yes, I've completed this. And it's definitely much more open-ended in a PhD. And it took me a little while to get used to it. Milad, do you have anything on that question?
Yeah, I think I have the same. I mean, my biggest challenge was very similar, is to define the research project and put it in a frame and have more visibility towards the next 2-3 years, that this project will lead to something. At the beginning, I had some ideas, but I discovered that all of them had been treated by someone else. So to come up with something new and consistent and has a chance to succeed and fits within a thesis, that was the biggest challenge.
And what was the second part of the question?
If the perception, how our perception changed for academia.
I'll let you tackle that one first.
Okay. if you mean the academic job, I had a lot high respect for academic jobs even before I started the PhD, but now I have even a higher respect. It increased my respect for academic job because I see how it can be very challenging and demanding from a faculty to do research and to do all the extra things to take care of all the graduate students, the funding, the grants, the department life. So yeah, that's how, I underestimated the faculty job actually before I started PhD, and now I have even a higher respect for that. That's how I changed.
Great. Go ahead.
I guess I'll just say what changed for me. I think going into a PhD, you have such high expectations for what you're going to be able to accomplish. And I think for the vast majority of people, I don't want to say you need to lower your expectations, but I think the whole process of going through any kind of research project, whether that be master's or PhD, you kind of get a better appreciation of what is feasible in a certain amount of time. And it's often these incremental changes that they are impactful and they are useful and they are necessary, but I don't think many people are changing the world with their PhD project. And that was a big perspective change that I needed to make.
Great. Thank you both for that information. The next question is, can anyone speak to the importance of presenting and/or authoring a paper?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So that is certainly something that we pay attention to in terms of the application process. That gives us a first understanding about your interest and passion and accomplishments in the field. But for those who have not had that opportunity, I wouldn't let that worry you or stop you. So if you have had the opportunity to present or publish, do tell us about it. There are many other ways, I think, that in the application process, you can show us why you are someone who is both passionate and qualified to undertake a graduate education in geophysics.
Thanks, Bill. Would that be information maybe they would want to add to their CV?
So that's the kind of thing that would be useful to have in the CV, or if it's significant, it could be discussed in the personal statement as well. Those are both good places, but don't include a copy of the paper, for example. That we can find it if we need to.
Thank you, Bill. Another question asks about, we talk about working closely with the faculty advisor, but since geophysics is such an interdisciplinary subject, they're wondering about the culture around collaboration with other research groups, as well as on certain projects that may have broad implications in the experience of graduate students on the panel. So maybe either one of you can speak to that.
Let me take it. Oh, sorry, Sonia.
Or
Carissa.
Carissa, yeah, go ahead. And Bianca, you can add too as well after Carissa, maybe.
Yeah, I think I can answer this question quite well. I came in to work with one advisor, Howard Zepker, and now I consider myself as having three main advisors. It's kind of hard to distinguish who plays a bigger role in my research. So Bill is actually one of them, and then Howard, and then in addition to that, I have Rosemary Knight. And I have loved collaborating with all three of them on projects. So Howard and Rosemary are kind of in one area of the research that I've done, and then Howard and Bill cross over into another area. And I have found it only beneficial to have multiple eyes on the same project. They're both coming from different perspectives, and I think that it has really enhanced my research and the results that have come out of it. And to that end, I would say that I have heard of a lot of students collaborating with multiple faculty members and getting involved in multiple research groups. I think that's well within what you can expect in our program.
Thank you.
I wanted to add that, it's fantastic that Carissa had that experience and she is here to report it. And but I would like to make sure that is not an exception, is almost the rule, and we built it that in our program. So we have a secondary project requirement. You can look at our bulletin and it's described in more details. But the basic idea is that we require all PhD students to work with another advisor most of the times in the department, but one of my students is working with a professor in radiology on ultrasound imaging. That is a requirement to have that secondary project working with a professor that is not your advisor. And that's exactly speak to the question that of the student.
Great. Thank you, Biondo. Okay, so just going through the next questions. So someone asks, maybe for Carissa, what has it been like living off campus? Is it affordable?
That's an excellent question. The Bay Area is very expensive. That is the short answer. The reason I am able to afford it is because I have been living with my partner the entire time we've been here, and he has a real person's income. If you are not in that scenario, I know of a number of people that have been able to afford living off campus, but it's definitely in shared housing situations. So you get a group of friends, you rent a house, and you're kind of good to go. From that perspective, I highly recommend taking advantage of Stanford housing if you can, because they subsidize housing a lot. I think the people who live on campus probably pay around half of what I do, and that is even expensive for a normal graduate student in the United States. So take advantage of your resources. But that being said, I do love living off campus. Something that you'll hear about if you come here during the first week of orientation is the Stanford bubble. And I feel very grateful that I get away from the Stanford bubble every single day. So there are pros and cons to living off campus.
Great. Thank you, Carissa. We have another question that says, what is the best step to take if a faculty member you contact is not considering a student?
I can take that because I'm not taking students this year. I'm in that awkward predicament. You know, there are plenty of other amazing researchers in our little subdisciplines that we would be more than happy to refer you to. We know our colleagues well, and we can definitely recommend good people who would be happy to work with you. So I know it's disappointing. There's a wide range of reasons why we may not take students, ranging from finances to just lab capacity issues and so on and so forth. So do not take this as a judgment on you. This probably has nothing to do with you as an applicant, and it has everything to do with us. But again, like, please ask us to refer you to other people.
So just to be clear, Sonia is talking about referring you to people at other universities.
Yes.
And we are very well networked in that regard. So that is certainly something to take advantage of. Indeed, I would say that almost all of our applicants are applying to more than just one university. They haven't put all of their eggs in a Stanford basket. And if you need any guidance on that, we can certainly talk about that as well.
Great. Thank you both. So we have a question that says, I am curious about the environment of the PhD program. The two different master's programs were mentioned, but is there a trend in whether students in the PhD program are more industry career versus academic career motivated? In other words, do you think the program tends to emphasize preparation in one or the other? Who wants to answer that?
Well, I can speak a little about that from a student perspective. I think that whatever you come in thinking your career is going to be, you'll likely be doing something completely different by the end. And in addition to that, and a challenge you'll find in every program that you go to is your advisors exist in the academic world, and not many of them have had extensive experience in industry, and so a lot of their knowledge and a lot of their network is going to be more towards academia. But that being said, the university as a whole has a lot of resources available to you if you are interested in more of the private sector industry related jobs. So no matter what you think you're going to do, there are resources here to help you achieve that. But keep in mind that you'll likely find yourself going on unexplored or unthought of paths by the time you finish.
Great, thank you, Carissa. Someone else want to add?
Well, I can add just a little bit more about this. I think we explained this on the website, but those of you who may be interested in a PhD, we encourage you to apply for us as a PhD student. We don't encourage those who are interested in a PhD to apply first to get a master's degree. I know there are some universities that require a master's before you can enter the PhD program. That is not our system here. So if you're interested in a master's as a final degree, that's when you should be probably considering the master's program. Not always. There will be those who will want to get a master's to decide if they are really interested in a PhD. And these are useful things for us to hear from you in your personal statement. So we have a way of evaluating what your interests in coming to Stanford are. So consider all those things as you think about your application. I know, Lupe, you may want to add something to that as well.
Yeah, I noticed that there was a question from an audience member about transferring from master's into PhD, but Bill, I think you have a great point that, you know, if you're interested in research and that's already an interest and that's a path, like you should directly apply to the PhD. Master's is just further exploration, right? Like maybe you'll continue to do research or maybe you want to go into industry. And so being really clear about what you want to do after, I think is important.
Yeah, thank you, Lupe. Thank you, Bill. So there's a question that asks that even though current transcripts do not include grades for this semester, the application requires official transcripts. And the answer is yes. So official transcripts are required on the application. Admitted students are required to submit updated transcripts after they are admitted. And so we understand that the deadline maybe puts folks at a time when grades have not been submitted for that semester, but official transcripts are still required at the time of by the time of the application deadline. And we had a question for Milad and Carissa. How do you cope with the change from undergrad to grad school and imposter syndrome?
I'm not sure if it's a right question to answer for me, because I did graduate studies before and I worked a couple of years before coming to the PhD. But what I can tell is that I had this maybe fear, or the main question I had in mind, if I would be able to sit in a class, take course, focus 1 hour or 2 hours, and then do homeworks. But it turned out everything goes fine. And for the second part of the question, I think you're in such a friendly community, even with other colleagues and students. We talk to each other a lot. So I didn't feel there is any imposter syndrome here, because it's not like everyone for himself or for themselves. We talk with each other and we help each other out. So we're all more or less on the same level at some point. So we don't have this complex. At least I didn't see it. So I hope, I don't know if I answered the question, but that's my point of view. Yeah.
Well, I can say that I have experienced imposter syndrome the entire time I've been here. And a large part of that is not because of the geophysics or Stanford community. One of the reasons that I chose this school over others was because during my visit and during my chats with current graduate students when I was a prospective student, they made it very clear that this is not a competitive atmosphere. Everybody is supportive of each other. Like, if you are here and you are putting in the work, everyone in this department wants you to succeed. So while that is the truth, I do a lot of convincing myself that it's a trick or it's a trap, or that I am comparing myself to others and just thinking, oh, wow, they've completed 2 papers and I haven't completed any. You know, it's a product of it's a disconnect between the reality and the fears that you build up in your head. And over the course of my PhD, I have really had to try to internalize what I actually see and what I tell people is the reality in our department. And I'm doing much better these days than I was. And so I suppose my advice coming in, if you are experiencing imposter syndrome, just trying to internalize the truths that people are telling you. You are here for a reason. You did not trick any of the faculty in our department that you didn't deserve to be here, or you deserve to be here. And just, if you need help seeking out the millions of wellness resources that we have. We have a great counseling and psychological counseling and psychological program. I'm blanking on what it's called because we just refer to it as CAPS. But there are resources here if you're ever struggling with that. And we have a great community of students and faculty and staff who are going to support you throughout your entire time here.
Great. Yeah, thank you both for that. It's a great question. So we have an answer for Sonia and maybe Lupe too. It asks, how do you believe the diversity program aims to incorporate their goals into the program environment and the daily life of graduate students, particularly as it pertains to increasing awareness in students who are not from underrepresented groups?
I can start the question and I'll turn it over to Sonia. So one of our new initiatives includes the DI Liaisons program. So this is a way to engage everyone at Stanford Earth. Like if they're interested in being a voice and contributing to an inclusive environment, we do a lot of events for the school. We celebrate different backgrounds, different identities. We just finished celebrating First Gen Week here at Stanford Earth. And so we invite students and postdocs to be part of the programming and help us come up with ideas, right? To really make sure that we have a broad sense of events and topics that are about everyone at Stanford Earth. Another thing which Sonia has been really crucial is that we have an associate chair for diversity inclusion. So each department at our school has a faculty champion who really brings to the department this awareness of DEI to their fellow colleagues and faculty and also to the department culture. So Sonia can share more about that.
Yeah, so as the ACDI, I participate in numerous ways to kind of help foster a more equitable environment in the department. So I've done a number of different things in this capacity. One, I've served as the faculty mentor for a class that we offer to all Stanford Earth students across the school called Diversity and Inclusion in the Geosciences. And we encourage everyone to sign up for it. And that's a great way to get everyone more engaged in the DEI efforts that are going on in the school. Students actually, as part of that class, are supposed to design a project for how to improve diversity and inclusion and accessibility across the school and just in academia in general. So that's a really great way to get more people engaged in the process. I've also facilitated student involvement in other ways. For example, I got Carissa onto a faculty search committee for a school-wide faculty search, which was successful and brought 2 new professors from underrepresented backgrounds into the School of Earth. So there's many different ways that I connect with that. I also kind of help identify candidates during graduate admissions and, work with the GSAC, which is the Graduate Student Advisory Committee in the department, to also, sponsor events and also wellness events and other things. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like little different things that we try to work with in different ways to get more engagement in DEI efforts. But those are just a few examples of things that we are doing.
Thank you, Sonia. Well, it looks like our time is up. We said we would end at 3:15. Maybe we'll check and see if there's, from the panelists, if there's maybe just one last question that you all think would be good to answer before we go. Just so you know, there are a lot of questions we weren't able to get to, but everyone here will be sent a follow-up email with information and resources, and I am happy to answer any questions that we didn't get to during this time. My contact information is available and it's on the website. So yeah, panelists, do we have a question that maybe we'd like to answer before we?
Yes, I would like to clarify one thing that I think came up in different ways on the questions on the Q&A. Is the one was about national origin and the other one about age. And I would like to make sure that everybody understands that our department really think about diversity and inclusion in a very broad way. And so this particular 2 questions were regarding national origin and age, but is, has been mentioned a few times, we human beings, each of us is different, and is the diversity can from, if you want, the mainstream, can be along many directions. And we as a department, we embrace diversity, national origin, and age one, but also different ones. So I just would like to send that message that everybody is potentially welcome. You will be definitely not judged based on difference in your personality, individuality, identity, or background.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Biondo. Anybody want to add anything else before we conclude our time? Well, again, I want to thank you everyone for attending this webinar. Thank you to all of our panelists that took the time to be here and answer your questions. This recording will be posted to our website, so it'll be available for later viewing. And then for any questions that we didn't get to, you can contact gp-admissions@stanford.edu or contact me directly, and we'd be happy to help you. So we will conclude our time here, and thank you again for attending, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day or evening or morning. So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.